Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today I have the pleasure of chatting with Karayah. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Yep.
Karayah? Great, courageous. Which you were just telling me that your uncle gave you that nickname.
Yes, I had an uncle who gave me that nickname when I was younger, and so I was watching a TikTok of Dave Warnock's, and he was saying how if you've deconstructed from your faith, then you are very courageous. And I was like, I am courageous. So
there you go. There you go. So speaking of deconstructing from the faith, first and foremost, welcome to the show, Gray.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be on.
I've seen you in the chat before, so like hanging out and shooting the shit with the folks there. Hi, folks, by the way. Oh, Atheist Chico from TikTok popped in. Hi, Chico. Anyway, yeah, there you go. This is the first hashtag coins of the day for the show. Of course, I can't fucking and I don't have any beer. I could drink a beer or two, but all I've got is this non-alcoholic water. No, it's not vodka. And yeah, so my approves. But of course, the good news is my hematologist has cleared me to fly, so I can actually fly. So it very much looks like I will be at Faithless Forum this year. The only thing I got to figure out is whether or not if you still need a negative COVID test before you go on the flight, which is like $200, which no big deal. I mean, I can handle
what?
That. Yeah, I know. But they need it about 72 hours before the flight or less than that. Problem is getting a COVID test and getting the results could take a little longer than that. So I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do now.
Yeah, I was able to just bill mine to my insurance. So.
Well, I could probably do something similar to that, but I don't know. I'm still looking into it. But I do have to book my hotel room by the 31st of October, so I'm going to be doing that this weekend. Yeah, but I don't think they allow the quick swab anymore. I don't
really?
know.
I don't know if it's different because like that's what I literally had to get tested this week, and I just there was the rapid testing, and then there was the one that like would take like 2 to 4 days, but it was both of them were the nose swab, and I did the one that took longer because I wanted it to be as accurate as possible.
Right. Okay, Mikey, I'll talk to you afterwards about this then. see what we can come up with. All right, but anyways, Karayah, what I do is I chat with people about their journeys away from whatever belief systems they're once part of. And so basically I just tell you to sort of take us back as far as you can remember and take us on that journey out of that belief system and how, of course, that affected your life afterwards.
Yes. Yeah, I'm really excited to share it. I've shared it a little bit on TikTok and with my closest like family and friends, but I haven't really done it in a public way like this. So both my parents are Christian. My mom, she was raised Jewish and she became a Christian when she was 18.
Wow.
Yeah, and my dad was like raised Christian, and so I was raised Christian as well, but like I was even just talking with my mom about this like an hour ago. Is one of the things that I am grateful for is there's a lot of I have some personal trauma, but I don't have very much religious trauma as opposed to a lot of people, because like the church that I grew up in, I've talked with some of the people in like the Atheist network group or on Captain Dadpool's server, and I kind of went to a church with a bunch of hippies. They were a bunch of like liberal hippies. Like there was one guy that like never wore shoes, and
oh wow.
And like my pastor would like leave his office crying and being like, I just had the most amazing God experience to a U2 song. And that was like a normal thing. So, but like the one thing is that it was a very, very small church. And so I was essentially the only person my age there. And so I didn't have a lot of socialization. When I was younger, I was bullied. I've
Me
always
too.
kind of been a little bit, like you don't have the name Karayah without people being like, wow, that girl's different. And when you're younger, kids don't really know how to how to handle that. And so I spent a lot of time like on playgrounds just playing with myself. And because of this, I had a very active imagination. I would just create these scenarios and these stories. So and so as I got older, I started having more and more questions. So like I remember being about 14 years old, and it's such a simple passage, but I swear at like 14, it was gonna, like, it almost broke my brain. And it's this passage in Luke. I want to say it's Luke 16. It's like 20, maybe like 28 through 30, but it's right after Jesus has been tempted in for like he's fasted for 40 days, and then he's been tempted, and he comes home and he starts essentially like confronting some of the people in Nazareth about some things. And the people get so angry that they literally, it's like a mob that has him pushed up against a cliff, and they're wanting to push him off so they can kill him. And all it says is, depending on the translation, some say he walked through and some say he passed through. And that's how it ends. And as someone who, like, I've been in love with stories for as long as I can remember. Even like my mom can show me pictures of myself as a toddler and go, well, this is your storytelling face. And so for me, I was like, okay, who wrote this and thought that this was a proper way to end this story? I have so many questions. Like, all right, what? You're like, what do you mean he just passed through? Did he literally walk through them? Did he go like, everybody move, Andre the Giant style, and like they parted ways? Like, did he literally push them back and he walked through? Because if any of those things happen, some of the people there would have been convinced he was the Messiah and would have like dropped everything to be like, I'm going to go wherever this guy goes. And half of them would have been like, oh my goodness, this is a demon. This is a, like, like this is an evil wizard. And it would have spread really far, and he would have been crucified way sooner. And so if I could think of all of these things, and this was supposed to be the living word of God, why didn't God think of all these things?
Right.
Like, why didn't God write a better story? And so, like, things
don't
like
even get me started on that.
Right. So I would like ask my like Sunday school teacher, I would ask my my pastor, and like the reasons they gave me weren't very satisfying. But at the time, like, these are leaders in your life. Like, you think that like, like your parents are smart, so they aren't going to teach you something that isn't true. Your pastor,
well, you trust them, right?
Well, but like when you're a kid, like that's what you think. Like, you think that your parents know, your parents know more than you, so they're going to teach you what is right and wrong. And then when I was going into my freshman year of college, not for college, sorry, high school. I had an uncle. He was the uncle that I was the closest to, and he decided this when I was in the 8th grade to move to Israel. He converted from Christianity to Messianic Judaism, and he decided it was really important for him to move to Israel and be where Jesus was. And then over the course,
how long ago was this?
So this would have been like 17 years ago.
Oh wow. Okay.
And he unfortunately, he started having a psychotic break, and and some of it, like, we don't know how much of this was based on like real things that were happening, and how much of it was based on like like his mental health, because he was unmedicated bipolar. And we actually didn't know that at the time. But I remember it was my like first couple of weeks of my freshman year, and one day I came home, and my parents sat me down, and they explained that as a protest to the government, my uncle had wrapped himself in a blanket, poured gasoline on that blanket, and set himself on fire. And he now had 3-degree burns over 90% of his body. And it really wasn't a question of if he was going to die, but when. And then he ended up passing away 5 days later on my 15th birthday. And And yeah, like it is, it's sad, but it really has changed my birthday from like just making sure that like I'm grateful for the people in my life and like not taking them for granted. And then just 2 months later, my dad was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and that was, I mean, it was a really difficult time for my family. He actually had it 3 times in 5 years. And my mom, during the entire time, she was working like 3+ jobs to provide for our family. And as much, I'll say like I don't have like as much like religious trauma based on some of the things that I experienced, at least from my like home church that I grew up in. They just really weren't there for me. They weren't there for my family in the way that like they weren't there for my sister, like, especially with me being the only kid in my age group. Like the youth pastor had one kid to reach out to during that time. And and I'm sure she, like, I mean, she's a beautiful person, and I'm sure she, was just like in grad school and juggling a job and her marriage and whatever. But I was kind of just left on my own during that time. And then when I, my parents, because, they were already not like financially struggling. And then with having the medical debt from my dad, they just were not in a financial place where, they could, do anything for me in regards to college. And even like when I tried applying for student loans, I couldn't get them without a cosigner, and my parents weren't going to be able to co-sign for me. And so the school that I went to was a conservative Christian college in Branson, Missouri. It's called the College of the Ozarks. Yeah. And the thing that's unique about them is that rather than have to take out student loans, they have 50 different workstations throughout their campus, and you work 15 hours a week at those workstations, and then one 40-hour week per semester, and that pays for your tuition. So like I really wouldn't have been able to go to school at that time if I hadn't gone to that school. But I was absolutely miserable there. I hated it. And and like while I was there, I remember they tried to sue the Obama administration over the Affordable Cares Act, which made no sense to me. And like now the school is trying to sue the Biden administration for he passed a direct order that essentially the LGBTQ plus community cannot be discriminated against if you are accepting federal funding. And that is a big part of how that school operates, is through like federal grants and things like that. So they're trying to like sue the Biden administration for it. And it just, all of it, it's like, it just makes me cringe. It made me cringe back then. It makes me cringe now. And I was, by the time I graduated, I was really fed up with, I would say, the conservative evangelical mindset. And then when Trump got elected, it brought all of the ugliest parts of conservative evangelical Christianity to the surface. All of the things that after 3.5 years of being at that school that I was completely fed up with, it like made it socially acceptable to be that hateful all the time, and to be that closed-minded, and be so, and so like I and to to have the prejudice that they had. And I wanted nothing to do with it. I started really like looking at my my value system, and to see, how much I agreed with the things that I had been kind of taught all my life. And then I started going to a different church, just because of where I was at my in my life at that time. And I had been going, and one of the pastors, because they had two pastors, and it wasn't like a pastor and associate pastor, they had like two co-pastors.
Okay.
And one of them was giving a sermon, and he was talking about how the book of Luke is reliable because the person who wrote it started writing it 4 years after Jesus was crucified, resurrected, and ascended to heaven. And it took everything in me not to like laugh out loud, because I was like, just do not think that we have Google on our phones right now. Like everyone and their mother knows that Mark was written first, and it was at least 50 years after.
Yeah.
Like I just was like, okay, so if this is a pastor who I'm like entrusting things in, if he is this mistaken, because I genuinely do not think this guy was trying to deceive anybody. I think he had misinformation that he thought was true, and he was sharing it with people.
You mean like all of them?
Yes, exactly. But I was like, wow, like if he's missing something so basic, what else have I been taught my whole life is true that actually isn't? And I kind of took for granted. And so
I'm gonna run out of water.
Started doing research, and I'm gonna backpedal a little bit, but it kind of all fits with my deconstruction story, because I mentioned before that I've been in love with stories for as long as I can remember. Well, I've also I will say I want to be a writer. You have to have actually written something to be a writer in my at least that's what I think. And I was so disgusted with the Christian books and the Christian movies that were being created. They were essentially like $1 million sermons that they're like sharing in movie theaters. They were already catered to a Christian audience. The writing was terrible, and as a writer, that's like, if the writing is bad, everything's going to be bad. Everything, like, you can't tell me otherwise, like convince me otherwise, of like, doesn't matter. Like the actors can try to do the best job they can, but if the script itself, and like that was every single movie. Like I think like I refused to watch God's Not Dead, even as a Christian. I refused because it was so offensive to me, because I was like, first of all, like that teacher would get fired. They would just immediately get fired. It doesn't matter. Like, but like there's no circumstance where this teacher wouldn't get fired. And when they show all the like listing of like the cases afterwards, they're not on that level. But they are, they're cases where it really did happen. Like I know of one that happened at a Missouri State University, where a teacher forced everyone to write a paper on why gay marriage should be legalized. And one student wanted to essentially write it about how they didn't think it should be legalized due to their faith, and the teacher failed them, like just immediately failed the paper, didn't even read it, just failed it. And that teacher was fired. Like it wasn't a long drawn out thing. Like, and so I was just like, this is just, first of all, it's not a realistic premise. And then they were, writing about what they thought Muslims were like, or what they thought atheists were like. And I, as a Christian, who, like, for me, it was always important to me ever since I was entered like junior high and high school, to have people, to be interacting with people who had different worldviews and perspectives than I do. It's like I actually used to say that the lowest point in my life spiritually was when I was only surrounded by Christians, and now I realize it's that the lowest point of my mental health. It was only because I wanted to be challenged. I wanted to interact with people. I wanted to be around people who weren't so. Is cursing okay? Cursing?
Fuck yeah.
Okay. I wanted to be around people who weren't so super fucking official all the time, especially being up at College of the Ozarks at a conservative Christian school, where it was really hard to find, meaningful and deep conversations. And so, and I was someone like, I never felt comfortable telling people about, like, if someone asked me, then I would tell them about my faith. I would tell them about my faith, but I was not someone who I never did like street evangelism. I never tried to like convert one of my friends to Christianity or like people I just met, because, like that just didn't feel right to me to just, without being prompted, to just bring it up, because I knew that faith was a very personal thing. And so whatever the person's belief system or lack of belief system was, that was theirs, and it wasn't my place to like impose that on anyone. And that was a big thing up at C of O that I felt really uncomfortable about, because I felt like they were like trying to guilt me into trying to be somebody that I just wasn't. But seeing these Christian films that, and some of the people actually behind it I do respect, because they aren't, I think like I hated there actually, I think there was a film called Courageous that was about like cops that are Christian dads, like kind of thing. And
I haven't heard of that one.
Oh, it was so bad. I was forced to watch it while I was at C of O, and it was so painful. But the people who created that film, they literally said, all we're doing is we're creating sermons. And I was like, okay, like as long as you're owning up to it and you're not trying to say like, we're creating this story that has, like where we've studied screenwriting and have studied how to craft a good story and to present it. Because like, for me, that was it. It was like, good stories. If you just focus on that, then whatever you're saying about God should be powerful enough within the story. It shouldn't have to be so overtly. They shouldn't have to be sermons. You should be able to have people with opposing worldviews be able to take part in the discussion. And, whatever the Christian says in that discussion, that should allow people who have different views to actually listen to it. But just yelling at them without listening didn't accomplish anything. So I started working on a novel about a couple who they essentially they lost a child at birth. And so they're both grieving, they're struggling to connect after this loss. And then the woman becomes a Christian and the man is a devout atheist. And I wanted the rest of the story to not be about whether he would become a Christian too, but about
how... No, they always go that way, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't always go that way. But I wanted it to be about how if, like when you are agreeing to marry someone, like what my dad would say, okay, yeah, Ricky knows what I'm talking about. That if, hey, Biddy Buddha, yay! That when you're getting married, like something that my dad has said to me in the past is, when you're getting married, you're agreeing to be with the 7 different people that person will be throughout their lifetime. And so
7 different people. What?
Yeah, like essentially, like you change so much over the years and over the course of your lifetime. You're agreeing to be with that person through all those changes. And really great, like when you're talking about, so for me it was about like, instead of it being about, okay, well, she became a Christian and now he's got to become a Christian too, which I felt like would have been the Christian movie version. It was about
stereotypical.
Yeah, it was about like, when commitment is challenged, or is their relationship strong enough to still be able to connect and to to be able to get past that. Or oh, thank you so much.
B.
IB. And so I saw this as
fucking phone's going ape shit. Sorry. 2
or 3-part book series. And so the first one was going to be where they got engaged at the beginning when they found out they were pregnant. And then at the end of the first book, he actually like proposes with a real ring. And and then the second book was going to be about them like planning their wedding and preparing to get married. And that was where the fact that they do have these 2 different opposing, beliefs or world, views would really be coming to a head as they're facing that commitment. And so I wanted her to be able to do her own research to confirm whether what she believed was true. And so it had to be something that, even though he wouldn't believe it, that it was valid enough that he could respect it. And so I started doing my own research, especially after I heard my pastor say something that was so...
That's good, Maggie.
All right, I got it.
And Atheist Chico has a public service announcement. Please use the chat message. Stop texting Neil Mario coins. Thank you.
But so I had but so it had to be something that he could respect, even if he disagreed. And when I started doing the research, I was looking for two things. One was evidence for the creation story in Genesis, and then for Jesus's resurrection. Because if I could find evidence for those two things, then anything else that was in the Bible could be possible. If God could create the world, he could get a virgin pregnant. If God could create the world, then he could part the Red Seas. Like, there are just like, if Jesus rose from the dead and there was evidence for that, then there was validity to Christianity. And instead, I found, well, like the yes, exactly, the Biddy Buddha, exactly. But so when I started doing the research, started looking for, science to back up what the story in Genesis, none of the science up. Like, because my dad, he's been studying apologetics since he was in high school. So he would, yeah. He's someone, he doesn't even identify himself as a Christian anymore. He identifies himself as a disciple.
What?
Yeah. So he like, that's his, like, he thinks that Christians, that so many Christians, they just memorize, like, they read the Bible, they go to church, but they aren't
Most of them don't
following the Great Commission. And so he's very frustrated with that, and that's why he has changed how he Biddy Buddha. I would love that. I would love for him to come on. I think that he would be very open to that. But so, yeah,
I'm going to show them atheists because I'm a disciple.
No, he really likes discussions. He's a very difficult person to have a discussion with sometimes, because he has a language delay. He actually, one of the things that I learned as I got older was he was on the drug trials for Ritalin in the 60s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Me too.
Well,
70s for me, but yeah.
And he has this way, like, of communicating. We'll call it Pete speak, because people just don't understand it. And I have, lived with him for so long that I almost have to translate it, being like, so he means this. And he'll be like, yes, that's what I was trying to say. And Iron Charioteer, I agree. It is illogical, and it's also not biblical. But
says who? All the Catholics think it is, and they're the biggest Christian group.
Well, but the Catholics also pray to Mary.
Yes, yeah, well, they do.
Like, not that they're like, if someone is Catholic and they're still just being like a decent person, that's totally fine. But there's some things about the doctrine that are like, really? Okay. Just like any belief system. But yeah. Okay. So I was doing the research, and a lot of the things, like, I've never really, like, up until I started the deconstruction process, I didn't know very much about science. Like, I knew enough to regurgitate high school lessons, but but I knew that I wanted, but I had to, like, learn more to be able to understand the science that I was learning. And when my dad would be sending me these articles or sending me YouTube videos to watch, it was like they were forgetting very basic essentials. Like, I would send him a message back, and I'd be like, but what about Einstein's theory of or this, or like of gravity? And he would be like, oh, I don't think I had watched this one. I'm like, so you sent it to me and you hadn't even watched it? And he was like, yeah. And so And so I was, and then like for the, even like with the resurrection, with when my pastor said that the reason we could trust Luke was because he started writing it 4 years after Jesus died. So he was interviewing people when, it was all fresh in their minds. That still didn't make sense to me. I was like, that doesn't actually mean it's true. That just means that everybody agreed to tell the same story. Like that just means that, or that they believed it was true. That doesn't actually make it true.
That's right.
And so I started just, there were more and more holes and more things just to kind of affirm for me that this book was not the infallible word of God. And so then once I started questioning that, then once I started questioning that, then I started questioning everything. And and like the biggest thing that I couldn't let go of, like, because even when I was a Christian, I believed that faith was an emotionally based experience. So I believed that, based on what I had read in the New Testament, that that God didn't work in a physical way anymore. He worked through the Holy Spirit, and Holy Spirit worked through our brains and through our emotions. So if someone was an atheist, I never held it against them, because it was like they haven't had the same experiences with the Holy Spirit that I have, that has convinced them to believe. And so the experiences I had with the Holy Spirit was kind of the thing that I was having trouble letting go of. And I was sharing about it with my with some of my coworkers that I really trust. And one of them told me, if you become an atheist, if you decide to make that choice, you're gonna have hard times. You're gonna have you're going to have low points where you wish that you still believed in God. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And this coworker, who I was also friends with, was that he was explaining to me that he went through a health scare about a month before. And
what from? What was it?
he didn't specifically tell me, but the impression I got was it was an HIV scare. Because then when he was saying, he had so much anxiety about it, he was so scared, and he was in his room and he was like having like a panic attack, and he really wished that he had believed in God so that he could cry out to him or like pray to like feel better during that time. And I thought about it, and the next day I came to work, and I said, and I'm not going to say his name, so I'm just going to call him Toby. So I said, Toby, was your sister home when that happened? And he said, yeah, but I don't really feel comfortable sharing things about my sexual health with her. And I was like, well, that makes sense. But like, did you try calling me or like texting me? Did you have other friends that you felt like you maybe could have like talked to about it? And he was like, yeah, I probably did. I just didn't think of it at the time. And I was like, so do you think that during that time, when you were going through that difficult, like that really emotionally difficult experience, that, if you had friends who you really trusted there to either talk about what you were feeling, or to just be like, hey, I'm not ready to talk about it, I just need people to help me get it off my mind. Do you think that you still would have felt the need to cry out to a God? And he said, no, not at all, not even once. And that like clicked, like set off a light bulb for me of being like, okay, so like that's not, so our need for God is actually our need for other people. When the stress hormone, when we experience it, it's also a bonding hormone. So whenever the two are directly connected. So when we are going through a time of stress, whether it's a physical stress or it's an emotional stress, our brain will literally be trying to tell us to reach out to someone, go get help, go talk to someone, go, because like that is what we need, is we need that that connection. And so with you know, a lot of times when I did experience the Holy Spirit, like I never experienced it on my own. It was always around other people. It was always a shared you know, a shared experience. I usually had people who were you know, putting their arm around me. They had their hands on me. They were, you know, they were communicating that they cared and they loved me. If I was going
Right.
through, you know, when people are going through a hard time and they're asking for, hey, can you pray for me? They're asking for help so they don't feel alone in their pain, or they don't feel alone in their stress. And so that was kind of the very last thing that I needed to really just be able to let it go. And then it took me a bit longer to you know, I told my friends first, but it took me a while to tell my family. And that was a really interesting experience. Now, I don't know at what point we want to kind of transition to that, as far as for how they responded. But growing up, my mom has always been like, especially being a kid who was bullied. My mom was always like my support. She was my emotional support. She was there for me from the, you know, from the beginning. And it's and my dad, you know, he's you know, he's someone, if I said I needed him for something, he would literally like drop whatever he was doing and like, you know, try to be there to help me. But
Right.
he is the one who, like, I mean, especially as I was going through, like, because I kind of almost deconstructed from conservative evangelical like that part before I did.
Not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I'm very glad, grateful about that. Well, hello.
Oh, kitty.
This is Saphira, the Persian princess. And
Oh,
yeah, I know, baby. I know.
time for a little kitty OnlyFans, I guess,
Yep,
huh?
all
Oh,
about
it's
that. This is
cute.
my sister's cat.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, but now she's my cat because um yeah, so my mom is always the most loving and accepting person. Like you know, like I said, I've always had you know, friends who had different belief systems than I've had, because it was always just a very important part of I guess like human connection for me. And when I and she was the safe place for a lot of my friends. Like if they didn't feel like they could tell, all righty, puppy. Now I got a puppy.
holy crap! It's George
Sorry
Orwell's
for,
Animal Farm going on here.
yes, sorry for the zoo.
Oh, it's
So
okay. We like floofs.
so she yeah, she was like the safe place for me. She was the safe place for my friends. And but I was worried about telling my dad because of you know, his faith is like such a big part of him. And like as I was going through those questions, he was trying to really like help me with finding the answers. And ultimately, what it was that I didn't find the stuff that he was sending me to be compelling enough. And
Right.
or sometimes I was just like, well, that's just straight up wrong. That's not what happened. And then and so um when I told my parents, my dad actually took it really well. My dad was like, hey, you know, like you're asking yourself some really big questions, and that's a really, really important part of the process. You know, like, so if you have any questions or you want me to, like, you know, send you any other resources, like I have some other books that I can send you, but, you know, like whatever, you know, you're going through. And my mom lost it. um my mom, you know, and I think the big thing was that like she just ended up, she took it very personally, at like her gut emotional reaction. She saw it as me like rejecting, because her, you know, faith is a lot of times such a personal thing that when you are telling people you don't believe what they believe, then it can feel like you're rejecting them. And in her case, because, she raised me, she she was feeling that, and so she got really upset, and she was like, I feel like you've just come out to me. And I'm like, well, there's nothing wrong with coming out, but okay. And which is funny, because then like a year and a half later I did come out to her as bi, because that's part of the thing I've learned about myself since. But yeah, so and she actually, like, during that time, she said some of the most hurtful things that anyone has ever said to me in my life. And right, like a few days later, I mean, she came back to me and she apologized, and she said that her reaction was actually evil. And she felt horrible about it. And ever since then, she has been more open and receptive. And but yeah, it was really hard for me to come out to my parents. I'm sorry, the awakened one. It can be really hard to come out.
Yes, it can.
I find it helps to, like, the people that aren't going to, like, so I told my sister before I told my parents, because my sister was such a loving and accepting person, but like, she didn't go to church. She didn't really read her Bible. She just really loved the ideals of Jesus, and like essentially trying to love people as yourself. She was very much like my parents in that way of, like, whatever, like, she would drop whatever she was doing to try to, like, just be there for a friend, or even like a coworker that she didn't know very well. She would she would tell like, she had friends who believed all kinds of different things from her, and she also was like me. She never
From what
know
exactly?
that I am saved.
From what? Your made up hell? Is that what your pretend place of bad things? Don't think so, pal.
I don't know I'm saved. I actually know that I'm not.
You're not.
And
You
that's
don't need to be.
because when I die, I will go back into the earth, and it will be just a beautiful part of the cycle of the world.
Yeah,
and I'm okay with that. And
yeah.
hell isn't real anyway. So even if God, if soul annihilation is real, then that's actually my preferred method. Like,
well, there's no such things as souls anyway, so who cares?
Exactly. So, but yeah, so like, my sister was very accepting, and unfortunately, so yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of her death, and oh, thank you, Skywatcher. She she was 26, and she had a pulmonary embolism that caused a heart attack. And and that has really made it, like, this year be incredibly hard. But and that was something that it was really interesting to see how my mom in particular responded to the loss versus how I did. Because I remember when we were planning the funeral, it was very important to her that it was known that that she's with Jesus now. And of course, I don't believe that. I believe, like, she lives in my memory. She lives in, like, small ways that I can honor her. And she but her faith was an important part of who she was. So I didn't mind that it was part of the ceremony, because it was just about honoring her. But like, I obviously don't have the same beliefs about, like, what happened. But that's also why I, like, this little kitty right here, like, I inherited her from my sister, and now that's why she is so precious to me. But yeah, I mean, I can share more. I just don't know if you guys have any questions or anything.
I don't know. What do you think, Mikey? You got any questions, buddy? He's just getting himself together there.
My precious. This cat is precious to me. Anytime anyone uses the word precious, I don't have too much to go on. You seem to have like a very well metered take on the world around you, and you kind of accept it as it comes and move with it as it moves with you. And I know it's very jarring for a lot of people, but it seems like you just kind of like, well, let me stop and think, and I will solve this problem. And that is fucking admirable, because I did not do that. I was like, what the fuck? This is all bullshit. But you're just like, huh, no, that's not true. So I'm not gonna believe it. So moving on. I'm gonna go have a fucking sandwich and a Capri Sun. I don't have to deal with this because it's not true.
Dr. Josh.
I was just laughing at that too. Hey, Dr. Josh, good to see you, man.
Actually, with that part of because like when I was a Christian, there were things like I talked about, even like being 14 and having almost a mental breakdown over like 3 Bible verses, right? There were a lot of things that I had questions about, but I just figured once I got to heaven that God would be able to explain everything to me that I didn't understand. And as I got older, I was like, nope, if I want the answers, I have to look for them.
Yeah.
But I also had to become very comfortable with saying I don't know.
Yeah.
Because so I don't know if you guys are familiar with Brene Brown. She's kind of my spirit animal. She gave this TED talk about the power of vulnerability and how like human connection is why we're all here. But vulnerability is very uncomfortable because whenever we're experiencing like bad emotions, like negative ones, like a lot of times our gut instinct is to want to shut them down, but we can't selectively numb emotions. So whenever we are like, well, I don't want to feel this like anger, grief, shame. So I'm going to drink a beer and eat a banana muffin. Like that will also numb out, joy and passion and, like those opportunities for genuine moments. So, like in order to be able to experience it all, you have to be able to embrace vulnerability. And part of being vulnerable is admitting when you don't know. It's trying to stop making the certain or the uncertain certain. Where, discussions about religion, a lot of times it's just people yelling at each other saying, I'm trying to answer it, Dr. Josh, but thank you. Because, a big part of it is, them like just yelling at each other of like, I'm right, you're wrong, shut up. And they aren't really listening to each other, and they aren't having discussions about like the possibility of like, what if what I've been believing is incorrect? I had to do that. The big one for me was I was a very, very pro-life individual. One of the things that I'm embarrassed about is that I actually voted for Trump in the 2016 election. And
What?
Yeah, every single Mikey was like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
Done.
Fuck this shit, I'm out.
Yeah, no, I didn't like either of the candidates in 2016. So I had to look at like just the policies themselves. And at the time, I was very ignorant about late term abortions and about the situations where they like when they actually happen. And I was so opposed to it that I voted for Trump based solely on that issue. And then I regretted voting for him every single day. Like literally the day after he won, I was like, I think I made a mistake. Yeah, this was bad, because I saw how, like, especially being sick of Bliss, my friend Bliss is watching. Bliss, you knew this about me. Because I've apologized, like I feel like I have to apologize for the world that I did it. But I definitely I had to educate myself about late term abortions and about like the actual circumstances around them, and that it's not just someone who at like 28 weeks decides they don't want to be pregnant anymore. these are like heartbroken women who have like baby names picked out and like rooms, and her life is in danger or the baby won't survive. So once I started looking at that, then I had to start looking at it backwards and start doing more research from that point. And yeah, like having to admit that you're wrong is hard, and it requires a lot of vulnerability, and a lot of people just trying to either, they avoid it, they try to perfect things in their lives to avoid vulnerability, or they try to make everything certain so they can feel comfortable. And I'm just not wanting to, I don't want to make myself comfortable if it means I'm believing something that is wrong.
Right. At that point, it's not worth it because it doesn't mean anything.
That's right.
Like, I could steal all the money from the bank in Monopoly, but does that really mean anything? Does it really mean anything? No, it just means you're a damn cheater. That's what it means.
Yep.
We have a believer in the chat, actually, as you've seen, the blessed be he or whatever.
Blessed be he, yes.
He's very close to being banned.
Right.
No. Right on the edge.
Yeah.
He can
Why,
beef off
Dr.
all
Josh?
he
Why
wants.
are you edging? You're egging him on.
Dr. Josh, at least Dr. Josh is intelligent with his obvious trolling. But blessed be he, this is not your fucking deconversion story. You do not get to take over the chat and derail the conversation to make this whole thing about you and your made up beliefs. This is her story, not yours.
Yeah.
Be respectful.
Yeah.
Ask her questions.
They can't do that.
Make it about you.
They can't do that.
It's not about you. Go to the after party and then we can all, as a group, destroy you and debate, but not during her deconversion. Have some fucking manners.
Wow.
Yeah, no, the funny thing is, like, I said that my dad responded to it initially really well, and every once in a while it'll be like every couple months that like suddenly it's like he decides to troll me in real life. Like, he's not an internet troll, he'll just send me these messages. Like, I remember I woke up one morning to a message from him that was like, as an atheist, the Declaration of Independence doesn't actually apply to you. And I was like, and good morning to you too. Like, I sent him a message back being like, so the founding fathers also didn't include women of color, like people of color, women, like, are they just fucked forever?
People
Am I
who
supposed
didn't,
to, like, what is your intention behind this?
People who didn't own property, like, none of these people were implied when it comes to the Declaration of Independence and the original Constitution. You didn't have it.
Right. And I was like, also, what is your intention behind this? Is it to be like, oh no, I'm not safe in my own country, I should become a Christian again, so the Declaration of Independence can apply to me? Or was it like, oh, I'm not safe in my country, I should get the fuck out? Like, what is your intention here? And then he just started sending me, I actually made a TikTok about it, showing like the message after message he sent me, where it was like, it just got worse and worse. But and then, like, when I told everyone, like, was telling like my friends and my closest family were in like a group message that I was going to be on the show, he got really upset, and he was like, it really bothers me that you haven't even looked into any of the evidence. And I was like, how do you know I haven't looked into the evidence? And he was like, a simple Google search. And I'm like, how do you know? Like, I have not found compelling evidence. That doesn't mean I haven't looked for it. Like,
That's right. That's right. Yeah. I mean, if you got to admit, I mean, the evidence is weak at best, right? So
it's just biased. Like, for me, it's that that they're starting with the conclusion and they're working backwards instead of starting with open-ended questions and just seeing what the evidence actually, what evidence is actually there. Because I have done a Google search and I will get page after page after page of Christians trying to defend their faith. I don't get unbiased sources. I don't get secular, if if it is a universal truth that any professional would be able to come to that conclusion, then it shouldn't be something that's debated. Historians, whether they are Christian or not, should be able to look at the evidence and go, yes, this is true. No, this is false. Like,
that's what
it's either
science is
true
for.
or it isn't.
It's the best method we have for discovering how the universe works and how the laws of nature and physics and stuff work. It's the best tool we have.
Yeah.
So a 2,000-year-old bullshit book is not the best tool we have. Besides that, it got everything wrong. When science finally kicked in and we realized this, we realized that the solar system didn't move around the Earth. The Earth fucking around the rest of the solar system went around the sun. There's no fucking firmament.
Can you
There's
think
no
about what
black
else
firmament.
Galileo might have discovered if he hadn't been persecuted by the church?
You never know.
You know, like you just don't know how many scientists were just silenced because what they were discovering didn't fit with the religious texts at the time.
We could have all had rocket boots, but no, they wanted to persecute the scientists, and now I'm walking on my own feet like a noob.
Have you ever like seen a band name and you just know they're never going to live up to that? Like their music isn't going to be that good. And like there was one, I was like at a record store and I was like flipping through and I found one for a band called And We Were Promised Jetpacks.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, and I just was like, oh my gosh, that's such a great band name. And then like listening to it, I was like listening to it, I was like, it doesn't live up the hype.
Tons of mice finally showed up.
Tons. No, you're fine.
Dr. Dosh, you're wonderful. You would only be more wonderful if you like hopped in here as Dr. Kent Hovind.
Everybody wants him to do that these days. Mind you, he does a fucking like the best impression of him I've ever seen by anyone.
Right.
It rivals Ocean Keltoy's impersonation of Peterson.
I'm not going to say he's afraid, but he's definitely not going to jump in the after party and do it. He's nervous. He gets shy with the anxiety. You know, he's just scared to do it. And that's okay. All right, that's fine.
That's okay.
We accept him and his stage fright.
Dude, if he decided to start selling on Cameo and doing like personalized videos, if he ever needed to make some extra money,
the cash on the side,
right?
I'm looking into doing that actually right now, doing voice work and stuff. And you don't need to do voices. You can just use your own voice and read books or read scripts for like commercials and stuff like that. And it looks like I might be getting in on that. So
yeah,
that'd be awesome. I could make some extra money on the side.
I definitely think there should be some of the other people in our community that should be on Cameo just for those kind of things. Like I mentioned that to like Captain Dadpool and stuff.
Actually, I got Josh's book. So
yeah,
it's fucking awesome.
It's amazing.
I have the audio one too. I got them both. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah, I do too. I have it on my Kindle and I have the audiobook, so I'll be like reading while I'm listening.
Yep.
Because otherwise I start like
in the lab.
Seth Andrews' voice is like so smooth. I start zoning out because I'm in like a trance, and then I start realizing like I haven't listened for the last like 5 minutes to what he's actually saying.
Whatever you do, don't listen to the episode I had him on then.
Oh, I saw that you had him on here, and I was like, I have to go back and watch it because I've watched a lot of the.
Oh yeah, they're great books. Sorry, I just had to give that extra little plug in there. It's not. I don't have it within reach though, because my roommate was looking at it, so it's still sitting by her computer. And usually I have everything within reach. So, it's a doggy dog. What? Oh. Bone. Bless him with wearing no bone underwear. Oh, thanks, Biddy. I'd read to you for sure. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. No.
Call me Ishmael.
Wait, Karayah, I want to say, first of all, it was great having you on.
Oh, thank you.
And hopefully someone will get a little something from your story and it might help them out, because that's one of the reasons I do these, is to help people out if they're having doubts and they want to hear how other people handled these doubts and what they did about it. And also to let them know that there's definitely there's a good community here. There are shitheads in the community too that are seemingly getting all the attention these days, but there are some decent folks in our community, and we'll always be there for the folks that that do find their way free of these fallacious, nonsensical beliefs. because that's
Well,
really what they
yeah,
are.
that's what I really have like learned from this community and from seeing, watching people like Jeff the atheist troll and like having these debates is like I'll see people in the comments that are like, why are you even doing this? They're you're not going to get through to them. And it's like, yeah, no, like that person may be so set in their ways that like they're not willing to look outside, but someone else who is listening may be like me when I was going through my deconstruction, or maybe a brand new atheist. Like, I mean, that's something that TikTok has been so helpful with me for. I have grown so much in like my confidence as an atheist through the support of people like Biddy Buddha and Dr. Josh and Captain Dadpool and
Good people.
used to be Mother of Dogs, but now she's Queen of Heathens, and like people like that just really just like pour into their community and give them these resources to be able to fight against a lot of the misconceptions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's great, and we need more people like that.
Absolutely.
But anyway, we'll wrap this up and we'll get into an after party. Now with wings. We'll get into an after party.
Awesome.
If anyone would like to be involved in the after party and come and hang out with Karayah, Mikey, and myself, please let either Mikey or myself know through the usual social media messaging, things, whatever they're fucking called.
DMs,
PMs, messages, messenger, or whatever. You know the routine.
Quails, owls.
Pigeon.
Now you're just getting foul.
An emu that has been highly trained.
Carrier pigeon.
A squirrel.
What was that joke I always like to say? I sold all my homing pigeons on eBay for the 24th time.
He just resells them.
They just keep coming back. Anyways.
So my username on TikTok and for Instagram is the same as you see here, cray courageous. And so anyone, if you'd like to, I did, like I said, I made a TikTok that was about when my dad was trolling. So if you really want to like see the things that he said, I also did, I think, an 8-part series about my school, trying to sue the Biden administration and my history and experiences of what I've like personally witnessed or know that people have encountered as far as for the homophobia and discrimination within that school. So, but yeah, so if anyone wants to follow me and check that out.
Oh, you got some love in the chat there.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I'll have to actually add your TikTok link to the description box below, but I can
send it to you.
Okay. Yeah. I do have Cray's Twitter link below. So if you want to follow her.
Oh, yes. I'm on Twitter too.
You can do that. But yeah, send me the TikTok
Twitter.
And but that'll wrap this up, and we'll get into the after party again, guys. If you want to be involved, let me know, and we'll send you a link and get you into the show. And if you just want to hang out in the chat, as the little ticker tape says below, there is a link in the description box. All right. So before we do that, before we get out of here, big thanks to everyone in the chats, all the different chats, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Well, not that people really hang out in a chat on Twitter. They can watch it there, but and leave a comment from time to time. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Also, thanks to my amazing patrons. You guys really are the blood of the show. Without you, I really wouldn't be able to do what I do here. So, I'll pray for you guys. I mean, that's a joke, by the way. And anyways, don't forget that Randolph and I are starting our own call-in show. Eventually, it's coming. It really is.
Oh, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, it's called True North Talk, and it'll be our debut should be sometime. I'm gonna actually make a hard guess and say it'll be this summer. We'll be launching that. So, because we're just about done with the building of the studio, so it's just taking a little longer than we anticipated.
Thanks, COVID.
All right. Yeah, thanks, COVID. But anyways, it's called True North Talk. You can find out more about it on www.truenorthtalk.ca, which will link you to the YouTube channel, and you can be prepared for when we do go live. And don't forget that myself and some other fantastic folks are new co-hosts of the revamped and relaunched Nonprofits, which is an ACA product that airs 3 p.m. Central between Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. We just recorded the Halloween show last night, and we're all wearing kind of costumes and stuff. It's a lot of fun. I'm pretty quiet the first little bit, but I was fuming on the inside, and I didn't want to burst out with anything. So you just watch and check it out. But I state my pieces all over the place at the rest of the show. So all right, and last Saturday of every month, so that should be this coming Saturday, we'll be doing Atheist Drinking Out Loud with myself, Andy and Seamus over on Andy's channel, Laughing in Disbelief. So head over to his channel, Laughing in Disbelief, and give him a sub, and you won't miss any of those fun exercises that we do there. And we always have a guest with us, so you never know when I might come knocking on your DMs to join us for an episode.
Knocking on your DMs.
Yeah. All right. And student Dr. Ben says that he doesn't believe that the show is coming. It's coming. But don't worry, we'll clean it up after. Anyways,
how do you know that, Dr. Ben? How do you know that?
Just have faith. Yeah, that's right. That's all you need. A little faith. Just pray for us, Dr. Ben. Pray for us. All right. That's about it. Thanks again, Cray, for joining me for the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. And we're going to have a little bit of a break. I expect we'll probably go live sometime around 6:30-ish. So hang out and wait for us there, or be a part of the show and send us a message. You can jump in with us. And like I always say at the end of these interviews, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not. What's untangled?